Hey everybody, it's Justin, aka Retro Rhythms. I thought for a change I would share some things related to my love of classic TV. I do want to preface this by saying I had a little bit of difficulty with adjusting the light, which was a pain after I had prepared notes for this, so I'll do my best to avoid glare. But I have a couple of binders worth of 8 by 10 publicity photos from TV shows and movies that I have enjoyed over the years. So I wanted to pick a section of those and talk about them. So this is encompassing N through Z, mostly by title, some by celebrity. I'll get to as many as I can and try to share some information about the shows and films. So first up, here are Deborah Messing and Thomas Hayden Church in a still from the sitcom Ned and Stacey, which aired from 1995 to 1997 on the Fox network. So it was obviously before Deborah came to fame as Grace on Will and Grace. And then we have Demond Wilson and then Demond with Ron Glass. These are from an early 80s African American version of The Odd Couple called The New Odd Couple, and there's a full cast photo that you can see. A very short-lived program that I quite enjoyed, New Attitude, a sitcom starring Morris Day and Cheryl Lee Ralph. And interestingly, neither Cheryl nor Morris talked about this show or mentioned it at all in their respective memoirs, but I thought it was really funny, and there were some great supporting players on there as well. And I caught some reruns on BET when I was growing up, so that's how I became familiar with it. I think it was on NBC, but luckily I taped a few of them. This is another very short-lived series called Off the Rack from 1985 with Ed Asner, Dennis Haysbert, Eileen Brennan, and several others about a sort of, I guess you would say, manufacturing plant for clothing. And moving forward a little bit to the late 90s, this is an almost single season, but not really a full season sitcom. I was interested in this because of, let me make sure I'm saying his name right. Yes, David Allen Bache, I think that's how it's pronounced. He was on a more recent series called The X's with, I forget if I'm saying it wrong, Kirsten or Kristen Johnston, that was on TV Land, and I really liked his work on there. So I saw that he had been one of the leads in this series from many years earlier. So that was an interesting one. And how could I forget a film that I liked very much as a teenager, Only the Strong, with Mark Dacascos. And this is about the self-defense capoeira. Great soundtrack as well. I still listen to that to this day. Now, Open House ran, you see a theme here of single season sitcoms. This was a spin-off of a show called Duet. And it's funny because a lot of times people think Ellen DeGeneres' first sitcom was her own Ellen, which was originally called These Friends of Mine. This was 5 years earlier. It also starred Alison LaPlaca and Philip Charles Mackenzie, whom I believe are married in real life. And so it's about a realty company, and Ellen is the receptionist. And so it was a supporting role, but she was on each episode and really funny. Going forward to 2005, I did not meet this star-studded cast in person, but I was fortunate enough to find this signed photo, which is kind of rare for the time that it was made when the studios weren't doing physical 8x10s as much anymore. But Out of Practice, starring none other than Stockard Channing, Henry Winkler, Paula Marshall, Ty Burrell before Modern Family, and Christopher Gorham in the actual lead role. And going back to the early 60s, Pete and Gladys, starring Cara Williams and Harry Morgan. And Cara Williams, an expert at physical comedy and a real underrated actress. And Harry Morgan, a legend, of course, from many shows. This is just kind of a souvenir because I love the theme song from this 1988 film, The New Adventures of Pippi Longstocking. I highly prefer the original movies from the late 60s / early 70s that were filmed in Sweden and overdubbed in English and other languages all over the world with, am I saying it right? Pierre Nilsson. I always forget her name. Sorry. Ingrid Nilsson. I don't know where I got Pierre from. This was Tammy Lauren, and I don't know, it was just a bizarre kind of adaptation of the Pippi Longstocking stories. Eileen Brennan was in this as well. From what I hear, Tammy's kind of a crazy Trump head now, but anyway, the theme song was great. Pippi Longstocking is coming into your town. You might know it. Okay, so then we go back to the 60s with Please Don't Eat the Daisies, a TV adaptation of a film. And this is Mark Miller and Patricia Crowley. I believe Patricia went on to be in some soaps. And here's another cool photo of them. Now, into the 80s, The Popcorn Kid, only 6 episodes ran of this. I was interested in this because of Faith Ford being in it. Jerry Joseph was another talented actor in it. I was hoping to find out some more information on this show. I had come across him on Facebook, but I didn't get any response when I wrote to him about it because I thought it was kind of a neat concept. And anyway, very brief, obviously. Early TV, Pride of the Family from 1953 to 1954, also one season. The legendary Fay Wray and Paul Hartman. This show also starred Natalie Wood in an early role as the teenage daughter. And let me just move the page of my notes here. We're back in the 80s now with Rags to Riches, which I think some of you may know. Tisha Campbell, Kimiko Gelman, Heidi Ziegler, who was later on Drexel's class, but lots of great music and drama. Joseph Bologna was the lead actor as well. And this is one of my absolute favorites from childhood up till today. Even though only 10 episodes were made, this is Ramona, based on the classic Beverly Cleary books. This was produced in Canada, starred Sarah Polley as Ramona, Laurie Chodos as her sister, Barry Flatman as the dad, and Linda Mason Green as the mom. All really excellent, and some other supporting actors that have gone on to a lot of success as well. One of my favorites, Miss Elena Reed, rest in peace. She left us in 2009. 227 was my very favorite show growing up, and in many ways is my favorite sitcom of all time. I have no words for it, but it's just very special to me. So I came across these photos of her from different parts of her career many years ago on eBay. I never had the chance to meet her, but she and Marla Gibbs and Jackie Harry and the late Helen Martin, Regina King, just really awesome. This is Ryan Reynolds. This photo, I believe, is a year or two before he landed on Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place, so far off from the big movie fame. But when I was a kid, there was a teen soap opera on Nickelodeon called 15, and he looked much dorkier, for lack of a better term, than he did by this time when he had moved to LA and kind of gotten the glamour treatment. There's Alfonso Ribeiro. I like his records, by the way, Dance Baby especially. Of course, Silver Spoons was the show I saw him on as a little kid. Michael D. Roberts. I did not get this autograph personally. This was a find. I had become familiar with him through his supporting work on different shows, but of course he's done a lot. The late Roxie Roker. Again, my 227 connection, because she did a guest role on an episode, which I don't remember the title of, but where she played Mary's old friend from high school, and she comes and tries to take over. She's a successful author and self-help guru. I thought she was hilarious in it, and I didn't know till later, about her history and the Jeffersons, and of course she's Lenny Kravitz's mother. His label, Roxy Records, named after her, but she was a really special gem. And this show was called Room for One More. It aired in 1962. I'll read from the back of it to explain it to you. Sorry about that glare there. It says, meet the new TV family, the Roses, of the Warner Brothers comedy series Room for One More. Andrew Duggan and Peggy McKay play parents of the family which keeps growing as homeless kids are added. So, big family. I think there were about 24 episodes of it, and I have seen almost all of that series, and it's really cool. He was Richard Roundtree. Again, as a kid, because I wasn't born in the Shaft era, so I became familiar with him through the soap opera Generations with Vivica Fox and Janelle Allen and the late Christoph St. John and many others. And here is really early TV. This is The Ruggles, which was named after Charles Ruggles, a very well-respected movie actor. And here with him are Margaret Carey, Tom Bernard, Judy Nugent, who I think was later in the Mickey Mouse Club, if I'm not mistaken, and Jimmy, sorry, I can't see his last name the way I wrote it down. It wasn't on this photo. But it ran from 1949 to 1952, and it was one of the first sitcoms that was filmed over on the West Coast, because early on in TV, a lot of them were filmed in New York. And there are some surviving shows, not all of them by any means, because they were done on kinescopes. But I think there's about 7 or 8 out there. Very fascinating to watch if you get a chance. This is from an obscure show that Gina Davis did in 1985 called Sarah. I've only seen one episode of it. It wasn't really thrilling, but I really like her, so it was just kind of interesting to see her in that. I think there were only a handful of episodes shown of that particular series. I might have seen several. I just don't remember. It didn't somehow click with me, but I really do like her work. Sam Scarborough, again, this is someone I became familiar with through 227 through a guest role, actually ironically named Justin, on an episode where he was playing a boyfriend of Sandra's, which is played by Jackie Harry. This happens to have his resume at the time on the back. A Simple Life, which I believe aired 7 episodes with Judith Light and Brett Cullen. The late Florence Stanley and also Sarah Rue were also on this. She was playing a Martha Stewart type, and it was pretty cool. I really think that one could have, warranted more of at least one full season. This is Stephanie Beacham, Sister Kate, which was a 1989 to 90 show that also starred Jason Priestley in an early role. One thing that a lot of people might know this show for was there was an episode where Milli Vanilli appeared and sang "Blame It on the Rain," the great Diane Warren song that Robin Fab lip-synced. Now, Small Wonder, many people know, cult classic. It was on Fox. It was, I think, their first original comedy series, one of the first, definitely before Married with Children. It was on from 1985 to 1989, and I forget the name sometimes. Tiffany Brissett played Vicky the robot. Emily Schulman was really hilarious as Harriet, their neighbor, just so zany. Jerry Superin, the brother of Vicky. Marla Pennington played the mom. She had been on Soap. And Dick Christie playing Ted Lawson, the dad, who made Vicky the robot. Style and Substance, single season show with Gene Smart, Nancy McKeon, Heath Hitch, Linda Cash, who I saw more recently in a movie, Little Italy, with can't remember her name, an actress that's related to Julia Roberts. But anyway, this was a show that also had to do with a Martha Stewart type, and Nancy McKeon, because I love her from Facts of Life, was playing sort of her assistant. And Suddenly Susan, which was actually quite popular, much more than a lot of these shows I'm talking about. Sugar and Spice. You might have seen this photo before. Someone copped it from my Facebook and put it on Wikipedia. But Vicki Lynn Reynolds and Loretta Devine and the late Dana Hill. And then let's see, I did write down Laverne Anderson, who I don't know much else about, right there, and Stephanie Hodge, who was really funny. I don't know a lot about her either. But that was, I think, 8 episodes, so you see a theme here once again. Now, a really funny show. Temperatures Rising was on in the early 70s, I think 72 to 74. it was in like 3 different formats. This was the original cast. So we have here the late Cleavon Little, who's the only cast member throughout the whole run of the show, and his supervisor or head doctor, played by James Whitmore, Joan Van Ark, long before her Dynasty days. Nan- Nancy Fox, really hilarious. Reva Shaw, also really funny. They later replaced almost the whole cast, and Paul Lynde became the main doctor. I did not like that format as much, but Cleavon Little, really great actor. Here's another picture of just he and James. Cleavon was also on 227, playing a much older man later on. This is Debi Mazar in a series that I think lasted 6 episodes, I want to say. They tried to kind of tie it in with The Nanny at first and spin it off from that. I don't know if the ratings were just poor or if they didn't give it much of a shot, but she played a temp, and so obviously she's done many great things since then, but that was kind of a cool show to see her in a leading role. Some people might be familiar with That 80s Show, which was obviously kind of a, I don't know if you'd say spin-off, but after the success of That 70s Show. I thought it was kind of interesting. It was on in 2001, I believe. 2002, sorry. But it didn't last more than 13 episodes. Same with this, Then Came You, which 13 episodes were produced, but only 7 were aired. So we have, my point of interest for this was Miriam Shor, who's on the TV Land show Younger. And the other actors in this series, I don't know much about it. It seemed like most of them kind of disappeared. Susan Floyd was the main lead actress, and let's see, Thomas Newton, this good-looking chap over here. Haven't seen much else about him since then, but Colin Ferguson, I believe, has been in a fair amount of things, and Desmond Askew. But I'm not as up on cinema as I am music, so they might have done more than I'm aware of. But the interesting thing is this photo is dated May of 99, but I know the show didn't end up airing until almost a year later. But it was really good. I've only seen 4 episodes. I would like to see the other 3 that aired. I haven't been able to track them down. So then we go back to the 50s with Those Whiting Girls with the late Margaret and Barbara Whiting. This was a summer replacement series, I believe, for I Love Lucy. There's Barbara by herself. I can't remember who played their mom, but it was kind of interesting because Margaret was playing younger than she was, and Mabel Albertson, like she and Margaret almost looked like sisters for some reason. It was done, but anyway, you can find some of that on YouTube, so I'm not going to go deep into that, but it's good 50s TV. Now, a really cool syndicated show from the 80s, I have a few pictures here from it, was Throb, which was about a record label in New York City. This is Diana Canova, who many people know from Soap. Jane Leeves, who of course went on to Frasier and Hot in Cleveland, amongst other things. Here she is with Jonathan Prince. I believe there's another Jonathan Prince too, but he played the owner of the label, Throb Records. The late Paul Walker was also the son of Diana Canova's character on this show. I don't have photos with him in this, but I have seen most of this series. It's entertaining. They had a lot of guest celebrities on there, like Denise Williams, Lou Rawls, Jeff Lorber, Peggy March, and even renowned session singers that would show up in different roles, like the late Vesta Williams, Portia Griffin. I think Phoebe Snow was on an episode as some other character. But it was on for 2 years. It was in syndication. And this is Townies from the mid-90s, starring Molly Ringwald with Jenna Elfman and Lauren Graham, before they went on to fame in Dharma and Greg and Gilmore Girls, respectively. It's interesting because Molly Ringwald was the main character, but I don't know if it was just the writing, but for some reason the other two shone a little more in the series, I thought, because of course Molly Ringwald did lots of great cinematic work before this, and you can even hear a song by her when she was, I believe, 5 or 6 on my YouTube channel, because her dad's a great jazz musician and she is a very talented vocalist. Now, this is a short-lived show called The Two of Us from the early 80s. Again, you might remember I pointed out Dana Hill and Sugar and Spice. She was in this, and Mimi Kennedy, who's gone on to great things, and was also, I mentioned Stockard Channing. She was her friend in the original format of the Stockard Channing show, Just Friends, I think it was called, which you can get on DVD. This is Cindy Valentine. She was temporarily going by Valentine Leone, but she's a singer I really like who did some great dance pop music in the 80s, including the hits In Your Midnight Hour and Make It Through the Night, to name a few, Pick Up the Pieces. And she's very enterprising. I had the chance to interview her. You can find my interview with her on the Blog Critics website if you look up her name. Here are Pia Zadora and Tom Nolan on, in a picture from Voyage of the Rock Aliens, which is a kind of neat movie to see. And Pia does a lot of the music from it. Michael Warren from Hill Street Blues. And let's see, we have here a picture from the second incarnation of We Got It Made. Originally, this was on network TV in 1983. Terry Copley was a live-in maid. The late Tom Villard. If you ever watch Buzzer and see the New Hollywood Squares Match Game Hour, I think it's called, a lot of the cast from the show is on it. This guy, John Helmer, I think, was not in the original cast. That included Stephanie Kramer and Bonnie Earthseth, who's really funny, and Matt McCoy. But it was brought back in syndication several years later, and I didn't think it was as good the second time around, but it's still interesting. Here's Betty White in a picture with a poodle named Dancer. This is from 1957 when she was doing her show, Date with the Angels, which I really love. This is a personally autographed photo that I sent away for in 2006 with a dog named Kita that she had at the time. And here's an interesting one, Who's Watching the Kids, one of many spin-offs from Happy Days. So we have Scott Baio. Here is Tammy Lauren, which was interesting to me because many years later she was on the short-lived but excellent show Wanda at Large with Wanda Sykes. And we have Jim Belushi, late Jim Belushi, and the late Larry Breeding, and Linda Goodfriend, who I believe was on Happy Days, and Marsha Lewis. Here is the great Mary Wickes. There is a book about her, which I highly recommend. And you might know her from Sister Act and so many things over many decades. She passed away in 1995. This is from a show called Halls of Ivy, drama and comedy in 1953. And here's Carol Williams again in her own The Carol Williams Show from 1964, I believe. The very talented Hal Williams from 227, and also a very short-lived series that I saw one episode of from the 70s called On the Rocks, which is really cool. And the late Theodore Wilson, who's on That's My Mama, and many other things. And here is the very talented Emily Rutherford. She was not the main star of the show, but it's called Work With Me. It starred Nancy Travis. She went on to be in The Ellen Show with Ellen DeGeneres and Cloris Leachman, and also The New Adventures of Old Christine, playing New Christine. Fred Savage and Maurice Godin, I believe I'm pronouncing it right, from Working, which had a really cool cast, some changes the second season, but it included Arden Myron, Yvette Freeman, originally Sarah Knowlton, but then Debi Mazar. Maurice was really funny in that, and Fred, of course, was great too. It was another shot. Sandra Bullock in the TV adaptation of Working Girl. This was 1 year after her TV movie debut in Bionic Showdown, and unfortunately, only a handful of episodes of this were aired, mostly in the summer of '90. There were a few that were unaired. But Nana Visitor was in the cast, as you can see on this photo, and the late Edie Bird, and some other talented actors. And finally, actually two more, Working It Out. with Jane Curtin from Kate and Allie a few years after that. It was very good. Um, and then Yes, Yes, Nanette, also known simply as the Westinghouse Playhouse from 1961 with Nanette Fabre, really funny, talented lady. So those are TV shows I enjoy, some of many, spanning basically 5 decades there. I think over 5 decades, because The Ruggles from 1949 was the earliest, and then we went up to 2005 with Out of Practice. So span of 56 years, not bad. Lots of great comedies. I love comedies, as you can tell. There's not much heavy stuff in there. So hope you learned something, and you can ask me questions if you like, or comment. You know, please be nice. But I hope you enjoyed it, and take care, and I hope you're staying safe, because, COVID still going on, a lot of back and forth and uncertainty. So I hope you're staying healthy. That's the most important. But I thought it was time to do another little video, something a little different. Okay, take care and keep it funky, and enjoy some good TV when you get a chance. All right, see you later.